All right, guys, we are going to finish up our Warhol project now. So you should have finished coloring in all of your details. And now we are on step 8, our background layer. So it says to remove the selection. So remember, we have our marching ants around the border of our person here because we were coloring in our details and we didn't want to color outside the lines. So in order to deselect this selection, there's 2 ways we can do that. We can go to select, deselect, or the shortcut for that is simply Control D. So you can hit Control D to deselect or go to your select menu and select deselect. So select deselect or Control D. Now we're going to click over to our background layer. So that's the one that's our original picture that's turned off here. And we're going to make a new layer. So down here at the very bottom, this is just another way that you can make a new layer, is by hitting this little icon that looks like a piece of paper with the corner folded. And by selecting that background layer first, that means we're telling it that we want the new layer right on top of that. So make sure that that new layer is right between your background layer and your cutout layer. And this is what's going to be our background. So we're going to fill it with a color. So we're going to go to Edit, Fill. And what I want you guys to do is choose a color that complements or is contrasting to the colors used most in your picture. So if you are using a lot of blue in your portrait, then you want to choose something that contrasts like orange or red for your background. Or maybe you have a lot of yellow in your picture, so you want to choose something like purple that will complement nicely. If you have a lot of red in your picture, don't pick something like pink or orange. That does not contrast. So from our contents here, we're going to pick color, and we're going to pick something that contrasts nicely with the colors that we've used so far. I kind of have a lot of colors going on here. I have blue, I have yellow, I have red. So I could pick like a purple, or maybe I'll pick kind of a green color. I'm going to pick a bright green. And once you're happy with your background color, just click OK. And now you have your background. So if you don't like the color you picked, just go back to Edit, Fill, and you can change your color there. So that is step 8. The very last thing we need to do in step 8, once we're happy with how ours looks, we're going to get rid of all of these layers here. We're going to turn them into just one layer, which means we're going to flatten our image. So you can right click any layer and choose Flatten Image. And now it's going to ask if you want to discard your hidden layers. That means that background that we turned off, you're going to say OK. And now we have just one layer here. We flattened our image, we got rid of all those layers, so we're just working with one layer. So now we are on step 9. So as I mentioned in class, step 9, things are working a little bit differently because you're working on a different version of Photoshop. So step 9 in your written directions, we're going to do a little bit differently here in the video and in the demonstration. So make sure you follow along with this. If you follow the directions the way that I wrote them out, that's for an older version of Photoshop that doesn't really work anymore. So the first part of step 9 is OK. We're going to duplicate our image so that we have 4 copies. So that's going to give us that 2 by 2 grid like we saw in the example. So I'm just going to right click and duplicate layer, hit OK, right click, duplicate layer, hit OK, right click, duplicate, and hit OK. Some of the examples you saw had a 3 by 3 grid, so there were 9 squares. So if you want more than 4, go for it. Do more than 4, but the bare minimum, we just need 4 copies there. Now it says to double click the lock symbol on the original layer to unlock. So my original background layer is locked. I'm going to click that lock and unlock it. So now I have 4 versions of my picture here, and they're all good to go. So now here's where things get different. We are still going to go to image and canvas size. The directions say to make it a 10 by 10 square, but we are going to just double what our width and our height say. So you might need to bust out a calculator for this. If you have some decimal points like I do, I'm just going to kind of approximate mine. And you just want to have whatever is double there. So mine's 3 by 4, so I made mine 7 by 9. So just double whatever yours is. And then I can zoom out a bit so I can see my whole picture here. So now I'm going to go grab the move tool. So that image canvas size was the only thing that's different in step 9. The directions say to do a 10 by 10 height. Click the relative box, grid anchor. You don't need to do any of that. Just double the size of your current canvas. So now I grab my move tool and I'm just going to move my layers to the corners. And notice these pink grid lines here are showing that everything is lined up properly. So you're just going to move everything to the corners that they need to be in. And there we go. And I have a little extra space on the side here, so I'm just going to crop that out at the very end. I don't need to worry about that right now. So now we are in step 10. We're going to pop art our photos here. So right now everything's the same. We want to leave one of them the original, but you're going to grab all of your background copies here, and you're going to go to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and you're just going to change the hue. So watch what happens in my bottom right box here as I adjust the hue bar. It's changing the hue, it's changing the color. So I'm going to change my duplicate layers here to a couple of different hues. So Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and I'm just going to adjust it so that it changes. So that way each picture that I have is going to have a different hue to it. And remember, you're just going to edit 3 of them. You want to leave one of them the original color scheme that you chose. So now I'm all good here, and it says in the directions you can crop out any excess background. So if you have a strip like this on the side like mine, now I'm just going to grab the crop tool, and I'm just going to adjust it so that it crops the way that I want it to, and crop out that extra background there. So now I have a nice little Warhol grid here. So now you can right click and flatten your image again to get rid of all those extra layers. It's just one layer here. Now this is something I'd really like you guys to do, but it's not in the directions, but it will save me time for when you guys are ready to have your picture printed. So after you flatten your image, what I'd really like you to do, now you don't have to, but if you're watching my video and you're following along, I would love if you could do this extra step for me. If you're here and you're good, you can just save and you can turn in from here. But maybe I'll give you a little bit of extra credit if you can do this little extra thing. So you're just going to go to File, New, and I want you to make a new document that is 8.5 by 11. And so now we have a new document here. And then I'm just going to use the Move tool to drag my Warhol picture on to this blank canvas here, and I'm going to add a text box that has my name. This is Presser, Warhol Project, period 6. And you can change the font, you can change the font color, but if you could add that little text box that has your name, the name of the project, and your period, and put that on an 8.5 by 11 document, that would be awesome. And then you can turn that in, and then you have a self-critique to complete on Google Classroom. So make sure that this final version that you're turning in is saved as a JPEG. You always turn in your final project as a JPEG, never a PSD. The PSD is just when you are continuing to work on your project. So now we're all done. We can go to File, we can save as, and we can switch our file type to a JPEG, and then you're all good to go. So if you could do that little extra step, that'd be great, but otherwise you have a lovely little pop portrait here now.